it produced the corresponding values, which total to 666. Now, I'm Hebrew. I study the Hebrew scriptures. I'm not satisfied with finding something in English. That may be the common language of the world in modern times, and maybe that might be quite fascinating. But the fact of the matter is, I want to see it in Hebrew. I want to see his name in Hebrew, and then I want to track it. So over to the far right, you'll see in the table where it says the letter, here's his Hebrew name as it would be given in the Hebrew. And if you do the calculation on his Hebrew name, it also equals 666 from a purely Hebrew point of view, which is really fascinating. The coincidence that you could take this system and put it either in the common language of the day or the biblical language and still get the same calculation and the same resulting value. Now, whether you come at it as a Hebrew or as a Gentile, you still get the same proof. You still get the same result. That was enough to cause me to do much more serious research on him as to statements that he has made in his life and what he represents and so forth. So I have come to the following conclusion with regard to Prince Charles of Wales. Am I saying to you that Prince Charles of Wales is the Antichrist that has been prophesied to be at the end of the age? No. I'm saying that Prince Charles of Wales fits the prophecies that could be used for identification purposes of the Antichrist, and we won't know for certain if he is or he is not until he is revealed at the start of the Great Tribulation. If he stands on the Temple Mount and he makes the bold declaration that he is against God Almighty and proclaims himself to be God, and the images of him that is set up, as the prophecy says, at the abomination of desolation, then yeah, now I believe you can say pretty certainly that guy's the Antichrist. And in the spirit of what these prophecies are given to us to be about, they're given to help us to understand, to anticipate, so that we're not taken off guard. And I also find it very fascinating that in the European Union, which is now in the year that we are at, forming their constitution, and they have a very unique executive branch of government in which that out of the European Council of Ministers, each one is given a 6-month period to rule, and that they have this revolving leadership or presidency of the European Union, and they're now complaining that a reign of 6 months is just not sufficient time to get anything done. And they're trying to come up with a new system on how to have someone who could be like a president, like the United States, that would rule for 3 or 4 years, like the president of the United States, so he could have an administration and get some things done as the executive branch of government of the European Union. That they're now coming up with a system in which their president would be voted by the members of the European Council of Ministers. Right now, presently, as we speak, there's about 15 council members, but they're getting ready to have other nations join the union, and they're really in a tizzy about how many council ministers and who gets to vote, and so their constitution is coming up with a new system on how many ministers will there be and how much power of voting will they be. But they have concluded on this. They have concluded that when each minister votes, he contributes 6 months to the power of who that future president will be. Now, if you follow the prophecy, and let's say that they follow through as the prophecy says, and they decide to have 10 council ministers, if you have 7 of them give their power to him, 7 times 6 months is 42 months, exactly as the prophecy says that will be given. And when we get over to Revelation chapter 17, we're going to hear a little bit more about this system, because it will specifically state that at the days that we see the 10 ministers coming to power, that those are the days in which that they will vote. 7 will give their power to the beast, and 3 will withdraw and not give their power. And this prophecy of this final empire, this final beast kingdom, which is born out of, we believe, out of the Holy Roman Empire, is symbolized in the prophecy in a whole bunch of ways. Daniel, for example, it tells us as a last great beast that will tread down the world, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and that the 10 horns are called diadems or crowns, and how it seems to speak to that the 7 heads are like 7 ancient kings, and then the 10 kings at the end, the 10 horns they're 10 kings at the end, and they're the ones that give the power to the beast, to do it. beast is like a beast system. It's a whole governmental system. Fascinatingly enough, in our days, not in the previous generation, in our days, the European Union is taking steps to follow through and build before our very eyes the exact same description that we have in the prophecy. In fact, the new symbol for the European Union is a woman riding a beast, exactly as the prophecy said it would be. In fact, it's Europa, the ancient mythological goddess, riding a beast. And in fact, the way they describe the symbol, it is these words, a woman riding a beast. And that's what John will tell us later on about this beast, is that I saw a woman riding a beast. And so what we find is that John was consistent in being shown modern symbols of our generation, and he's reporting them directly to us. And it's going through this kind of the back to the future loop thing, you know. And here we said, it's not symbols, it's literal. It's something that's literally visible to us in this generation that is taking place, you know, before our very eyes. Now, I've spent a long time talking about the beast. We need to talk a little bit about the false prophet. The false prophet is obviously a religious man who works in conjunction with the antichrist. And it says that he will be given the authority to set up on the Temple Mount and set up and erect an image, a statue. Let me just share a very quick little fact with you. Jews, if they have the Temple Mount, will never put an image or a statue up on the Temple Mount. That's idolatry. Jews will never do that. By the way, Muslims who have a piece of the Temple Mount and control the Temple, they will never put an image up there either, because that's idolatry to them too. It has to be somebody that's not a Jew, not a Muslim, who's going to put an image up there. Some sort of a religious man that would put some kind of an image up there. There's only one man in the world who has in any capacity, could have any possible authority over the Temple Mount, who would ever want to set up an image. And that would be Roman Catholicism, and specifically the Pope. And one of the things that I find very fascinating in this world today is that how most average people in the world have no concept of what the Roman Catholic Church wants to do with the Temple Mount. The Roman Catholics, in the middle of all the Middle East turmoil, have been offering themselves perpetually as that they would be the guardians of the Temple Mount for both the Jews and the Muslims, and that they want ultimate authority over it to safeguard it for everybody. So wouldn't it be fascinating if at the end of the age, somehow they got such authority? And if they did have such authority, they would then be empowered to be able to set up any image they wish to set up. And of course, the prophecy goes on to say that this image is going to do some sort of miraculous thing and speak and other. So I don't know if you're in the same world with me, but I constantly hear about Catholics who have various statutes in different places of the world that do all kinds of miraculous things. And if I heard a news report that said that some bunch of Catholics had a statue on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem and he had spoken, it would be another yawner, you know, for me and the rest of the world, because we've heard of everything that the Catholics do with statues. It's no big deal. That's not strange or unusual in the world that we live in. And you could have a rather significant prophetic event that the Bible's talked about for almost 2,000 years happen right before this generation, and we would like, we would take a very apathetic position toward it, and it would come as a shock to people to find out that it was actually prophesied to be in the Bible. In fact, that's the way I find most of these prophecies in chapter 13. Most people look past these prophecies and don't see anything, when in fact they're all extremely visible and right before us. Now, there's another interesting aspect of the prophecy that concerns the anti-Messiah that we have not yet seen, but it's something that we ought to be paying attention to. If, for example, we think that Prince Charles or anybody else is a likely candidate to be the anti-Messiah, then we should closely watch for a certain event that will be taking place in their life just before they come to power. And that is that somebody will assassinate them. Somebody will come and do a lethal head wound to them, of which the false prophet will be part of the process of doing a miracle of resurrecting them or reviving them or something. Then that the world will be amazed. Let me just, for the sake of hypothetical, and by the way, Prince Charles has several threats on his life regularly on a normal basis, just because he's a world figure. Let's say that Prince Charles, some idiot shot him, killed him, assassination, got past the security and so forth. The world would be, compelled to watch every news report with regard to it, just like Princess Diana. Princess Diana's death and her funeral was the most watched event in the history of the world. They believe that at the time of her funeral, half the population of the world, 3 billion plus, were watching her funeral. I believe that Prince Charles, if he were assassinated, it would command a lot of world attention. And if he were suddenly resurrected, it would command a lot of world attention and bring him to the forefront and prominence and attention just before he might be rising to power. The scenario is very feasible and very workable in the world that you and I work in and live in. So the fact that prophecy mentions that may be part of the clues as to how in the world he's able to sweep in such rapid fashion into a position of power and prominence to do that. By the way, Prince Charles of Wales is interested in being the president of the European Union. He has made his intentions well known on this subject way back even when the European Union was first being formed. In fact, he attempted to get the European Union to make the executive branch of government to be a constitutional monarchy with him at the head of it. He already did try to do that. But they were into democracy, and so they decided to go with this Council of Ministers thing. But he is still vying for that position, has been, and it's well known. And he has both his supporters and his detractors on this subject. So it's not out of the wild blue that he might have an interest in such a position. It's a well-known documented fact. Now we go from this chapter where we talked about the beast and the false prophet, and then we come to chapter 14.